Hey there, welcome to saas.unbound podcast. I'm your host, Anna Jana, head of growth at SaaS Group, a serial acquirer buying wonderful SaaS businesses to take them to the next level. And here I chat with inspiring founders and experts to get an inside scoop on how they made their business a success. And today with me is Esben, co-founder of Userflow, a no-code user onboarding product for SaaS companies that he bootstrapped to 4.6 million, correct me if I'm wrong,
Correct.
with just a team of three, and then sold for what the gossip is at least a whopping 60 million. And I'm not even sure if you're going to disclose like the real amount, but welcome to the show.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, no, I won't get into the details of the deal, but yeah, it was a good deal for us.
Okay. All right. Well, I can see you're traveling. I was kind of hoping to catch you in Mexico. You're in New Zealand. So, okay, it's going great. I can totally see that. But yeah, well, first of all, it made the news like last year when we did the podcast, when I asked you if, exit is anywhere on your roadmap, you said no, you were going um, to go to the magical number of $10 million in ARR. But yeah, and you were absolutely sure that you were able to do that with a team of three, just a little slower. So what changed? Like, what is the rush suddenly?
No, so there's no rush. I think I still very much believe that Userflow could have made it to 10 million ARR with just a team of three. We were already on that trajectory. So been growing consistently the last year. It's been a great year actually, despite all the market conditions. Um, But I think for us, it was more, I think, a mixture of two things. It was a good opportunity when Beamer came into the picture and wanted to partner up. And so both from a personal financial benefit perspective, but also that we felt that they would take good care of Useflow. So yeah, it was just a good offer basically, and that's why we decided to change our minds. But yeah, of course, it needed to be a good offer because we were already doing really well.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. So let's talk about the synergies. Let's maybe yeah, explore like how you decided it's going to be a good deal in terms of like merger. As far as
Yeah.
I understand, it's not really a merger for now. You're going to just continue as two independent products. But yeah, what is Beamer and like how does it align with what Userflow does?
Yeah, no, so yeah, you're right. For now we're continuing as two products. I mean, in the future we'll see. But I think what Beamer is doing, so those not familiar with Beamer, they're very much like a similar company to Userflow. They were bootstrapped, very product led, and their primary product was changelog. So you could basically build a changelog for all your product updates and these kind of things. Uh, at some point they decided to expand their portfolio into things like NPS surveys and most recently a feedback module where you can basically kind of create product ideas and rank them and so forth. So they've been expanding and similar to how we've been expanding. So they're very much like an in-app widget similar to Userflow. It's content that lives inside the customer's product. So in that way, we are very similar, where we have focused on the onboarding and kind of also had some survey elements and also had some other elements, but we've been more focused on kind of the initial onboarding and the recurring onboarding, where they have been focused on like product communications, product news, and so forth. Um, and if you look at the modern kind of product manager, that's really they need all those things, right? So that's where we're going with this merger, is basically building a toolkit for the modern product manager, where they don't have to rely on developers to build everything. They can start building stuff with no code, as we have allowed them with Userflow, and Beamer has allowed it with Beamer's functionality. So there was a lot of synergies basically between the products to build a more, you can say, stronger company together that can go up and beat the bigger players in the market.
Right, right, because the market you're operating in is fairly saturated and competitive. But yeah, I mean, you already have an experience building and growing a bigger company with Cobalt. I think you raised $40 million, right? And um, Beamer also started as a bootstrap. Then earlier this year, I guess, sorry, last year, they raised a bit of funding, and now you're going that route as well. So, like, is it because, once you kind of happy with what the product looks like, there is the next stage of building a company, and that's not necessarily your cup of tea. Like you don't really want to maybe grow the team, work on the culture, and all that. Was that kind of in the mix for the decision to sell the company, or it wasn't really an issue?
Yeah, yes and no, because I think with Userflow, as I said in the beginning, we very much believe we could have taken it to 10 million with just a team of three. So it wasn't really, that wasn't the choice, I think, for us, because of course it would have gone slower than it can now with the partnership with Beamer and the merger. They can grow a lot faster. Things like you can speed up marketing, you can speed up sales, etc. So you can do different kind of things that will allow the combined companies to grow faster. But for us personally, we didn't need it to do that, right? So for me and Sebastian as founders, we would have been happy to grow to 10 million, in less time than the merger now is looking to do, right? And basically, I think what kind of more drove us towards the decision was, of course, we felt we had built an amazing product. We felt we had kind of built a very feature complete product, to be honest. So it was more, we were at a stage where we were kind of thinking, what's the next thing we're going to do, right? Like, what are we going to build next? Because we kind of felt like if we looked at our competitors, we were very on par or above them in feature parity. So it was whatever we were going to do from this point on was going to be a new thing, right? So we could either choose to do that, and we would have been happy to do that, or we could partner up with somebody who were willing to also basically give Sebastian and I some you can say financial personal benefit, right? So we took some risk off the table by doing that, and then we could basically continue, and we felt that Userflow together with Beamer can also grow a lot faster. So it is that mix really for a founder like me. I'm not, and I'm fully with you. I'm not a person who want to. I've tried that with Cobalt, building a company. That I don't want to do that again. I'm going to be very honest about that. And that's why I'm happy that Satya is the CEO of Beamer is there. He has a full team behind him. So there's a full team already ready to build that company and run the company, right? So Sebastian and I, we don't need to do that. And that's also not us as founder mentality. That's not something we want to do really. So that felt good too, that we can kind of hand over to somebody who actually want to build that kind of business. So yeah.
Right. Okay. Okay. So you're stepping down, like, because as
Well, we're not going to be the CEO and CTO
mhm.
or CTO of the company anymore, right? But we're definitely going to have an influence on what's going to happen in the future. But there is a CEO at Beamer, and Satya will continue to be the CEO. He, by the way, came from, which is a funny thing, he came from our world. He actually built a very similar product to Userflow in his past. He co-founded that and sold it. So he's very, very familiar with our space. So that also made it a really good fit.
Okay. All right. That makes sense. So maybe let's talk a little bit about the deal. And I'm not asking about too many details, but I would assume, after you started making, I don't know, 1, 3, 4 million dollars a year, uh, people started approaching you. I mean, that's also our space at SaaS Group. Like, honestly, like when new people would join SaaS Group and they would learn about the podcast, uh, your name popped up more than anybody else. Like, you have to interview Esben, and I'm like, yeah, I did that. So, so yeah, I mean, how did you navigate this? Like, because you told me, as many other hosts,
Yeah,
you were not really looking for an exit. Were you kind of
no,
still in supporting these relationships, building these relationships just in case, as many suggest?
yeah.
Or,
No, I think for sure. Yeah, I think I would always do that. Unless you have to spend a lot of time on it. I would
Mhm.
always build relations. I think it's very important you build relations with somebody who's like seriously also looking at you and not
Yeah,
just, there, unfortunately, in your market. So what I like about companies like Camber and you guys and similar is you're very focused in your outreach. You're very clear about what you're looking for. So both of you are looking for like PLG, kind of very SaaS software companies, PLG, ideally bootstrapped companies, because they're very capital efficient. They believe in self-service and all these great things, right? And I like that because you have a clear focus about what you want to do, and Camber has the same kind of focus. So Camber, by the way, for those who don't know, is the kind of private equity company that's backing the whole deal. So they're basically the ones who invested in Beamer and has been a big financial part of the merger with Userflow. So what I like about that is you're very focused. And whereas we get a lot of outreach for people who are not very focused, as soon as you reach a certain ARR level, you start getting a lot of spam. It's kind of similar to how you get sales emails about different kind of tools. You actually get these kind of emails. Yeah, we're looking to acquire companies in your range. And I went on a couple of calls with those companies, and then often they wouldn't even know what we did as a business, which I found really that's just bad, right? First of all, they don't know what you do. Secondly, you tend to be speaking with some kind of junior. It's kind of similar to a VC game. You
yeah,
should never speak to the analysts, right? You should speak to the partners. Never speak to the analysts. So the private equity game has a lot of spammers, and that's a bit unfortunate. So those you should be very careful, especially as a bootstrap company. Be careful about spending too much time on those kind of companies. Um, the other dimension that, of course, started reaching out to us when we gained popularity and started growing was the larger strategic players. Um, but I think a problem with them, for especially for like it depends on what kind of bootstrap founder you are. I think Sebastian and I, we are very we're both second time entrepreneurs. We don't really want to be in big companies, and the problem with strategic players is they will often ask you to stay for like 3 or 4 years, be part of a large organization with like thousands of employees. And that's not very attractive, at least not to me as a founder. I know some founders, they like that, or at least they believe they like that. I see many leave a lot earlier and find out they didn't like that. So I think that's a problem with the more strategic players, but that can also, if you find the right strategic player and you set the right expectations, I think you can find that. So I think what we did was we just continued to always focus on our own business. Like we never had the rush to go out and sell or merge or anything like that. We always thought, yeah, we are as long as we're growing, everything is good. We can have these conversations, but we shouldn't settle for anything, right? Like we shouldn't say, yeah, okay, here's some kind of good offer. Let's agree to that. So it needed to be a really good offer for us to even consider it, basically. Uh,
right.
so yeah, so we've basically been navigating it in the same. So, and we might have missed some opportunities because of that, right? But we've said no to a lot of private equity companies, but we definitely met with the larger strategic players. Just because that can also lead to good partnerships, right? So one should not always look at it from an acquisition perspective.
Right, absolutely. And I mean, sometimes strategic acquirers could offer much more. I mean, that's
Yeah,
usually kind of how it goes, right? So yeah, it would absolutely make sense. But like you said, I think your kind of biggest advantage was the fact that you didn't really need to sell. You knew that you're growing, you could go further, and that's kind of the best position to be in when you're
yeah,
selling, not really selling, just exploring. So yeah, great. Okay, so how did it go? Like, okay, Beamer approached you, or Camper approached you. You thought,
yeah,
okay, those guys are pretty cool, right? I
yeah.
want to talk with them. I want to. Everything looks great. So how was and was there any, because like for example on the podcast we also had situations when founders just kind of liked each other and decided to sell, and there wasn't too much due diligence, or like for example no tech due diligence, because well
Mm.
yeah, when it does make sense to do it, of course, but sometimes you can do a lot with tech, especially if you have a good team. So how did it
Yeah.
go for you? Was there any due diligence, and what
Uh,
did you do?
yeah, yeah, no, lots of due diligence. Originally, how it all came about actually is Justin Johnson from Camber. He met us at SaaS in Dublin this year or last year. And he actually, instead of going and pitching Camber or whatever, he said, "Do you want to meet with Satya from Beamer?" So the CEO of Beamer, and that was interesting to us because we had actually just launched a feature that was you can use as a changelog. So we we were starting to compete a bit with Beamer. So it was interesting to kind of hear his thoughts on the market, and that's where it all started from. Then we created a relationship with Satya. He brought Camber back in the conversation, and then it went on from there. We agreed on the, high level kind of letter of intent kind of things. And then the more kind of detailed due diligence started. There was some pre due diligence prior to the letter of intent, and then a more detailed due diligence after that. And I think it was a detailed due diligence, but it was very easy for us. And that is because we are a product led company. And I think that is something that a lot of businesses underrate when they have this conversation about should we be sales led, should we be product led. If you're a small bootstrap company and you're sales led, not only it's going to be really hard to be efficient as a sales led company, but when it comes to things like acquisition, you will typically, as a sales-led company, have a lot of custom stuff. You will have custom contracts. You will have custom deals. You will have custom whatever. Where we, with a product-led setup, all our subscriptions are created in Stripe. They're done, mostly are done, like 95% are done self-service. Even our enterprise contracts, and we didn't have many, are using our standard language, so no additional liability language, anything like that, right? So really having this super lean product-led motion was really, really powerful in an acquisition process and merging process. So that is something I recommend people think a bit about. And then secondly, I mean, the reason we've been able to grow is because we have an amazing product without bugs, without, it's just a great product and it's secure. We are SOC 2 Type 2. We do regular pen testing, all that stuff, right? So that made tech due diligence easy as well because it's just a great product. It's not like tied together with a lot of tape and stuff like that, right? It's a bug-free product basically.
All right. Somewhere our CTO is very happy because we were just talking about technical due diligence on AMA, and it was kind of the dream. I asked, like, what would be the perfect setup in a company for technical due diligence, and that's what they described. So
Yeah,
you're going to be
I
the.
think, and the reason we've been able to keep it like that is because Sebastian has really been the only developer, and he's an amazing developer. As soon as you start adding 10 developers, that's where you start getting bugs, you start getting misalignments, you start getting, these kind of things. So one needs to be, it's not always as kind of you add one developer and then you can build a lot more. It's never like that, right? It's actually
Yeah.
often the opposite. You add one developer and it adds more complexity.
That's true. But okay, so on that note, Beamer is not a huge company, right? I think they're
No.
around 40 people. So, but still, you are adding more developers and you are adding a bit more hierarchy there. Uh,
Yeah.
what do you expect? And like again, like for example, at SaaS Group, we also say, hey, you guys are staying independent. You're independent brands, and like nothing really changes. But I mean, you cannot expect nothing to change, right? Some things are going to
No.
change. It's absolutely normal. So
Yeah.
what are
Sure.
you expecting? What changes, and how are you? Yeah, how do you think about this basically?
I think so. The overall vision is really to create, as I mentioned, this toolkit for product managers, right? Um, so whether that will continue to be as two separate products or it over time will merge into something else, we will see. But I think overall, it's not going to decrease in value. It's only going to add more value, right? It's going to be a foundation for adding more value. Um, so the vision is really to continue to build out this kind of product toolkit. Either using one product as a base or merging the two products, right? So that's really the vision, and it's a vision. I actually love that Beamer is a small company because it makes decisions like that a lot easier, right? If we were merging into a large company, you would have to, some larger companies, I've seen that a couple of times, they just close down the businesses they acquire, right? And I wouldn't have liked that for Userflow customers to have just sold the business and then somebody would have closed it down. Um, so I think what they're going to continue to do is just Userflow is going to continue. We're going to continue with our customers. We're going to continue to bring value to the customers. And what's going to happen in the future is only more value is going to be given to the customers. So that's really how to think about it. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Are you or do you know of, any plans to add a bit of sales motion to your POG? Because, well, it seems like everyone's been doing it in 2023. And I mean, by the looks of it and like by the talks on the podcast, I hear that people actually see a bit of change happening already. Like we're not even 2 months into the year, but it seems like everyone is talking about the fact that people are relaxing a bit. Like it's getting a little bit easier. Maybe the
Yeah.
money's starting to flow again. Um, but
Yeah.
still, I think the common narrative is still going up market. So, is there any plan for that for user flow?
Potentially, I mean, we've been on that journey with Userflow for a long time. We have a good share of both lower part of the market, but also continuously been getting market share in the mid market. And Beamer is the same, right? So they also started with the lower end of the market, smaller businesses, and I have been basically growing into the mid market. So I think that's where the bread and butter is in the mid market, right? There's less risk of churn and these kind of things. So it's obvious that that's a market that we want to play in, but it doesn't mean that we don't want to play in the smaller market. So I think it's we're going to continue on the same trajectory where we are basically, it's very product led still. With Beamer, there's definitely going to be more resources to add sales assist and stuff like that. Where I'm pretty tough on sales calls. I don't do sales calls. I push back a lot on sales calls. Then maybe we'll have some more capacity that some salespeople can actually do a sales call with the customers who prefer to do a call instead of a video. So I think the product-led roots are going to stay, but there will be more resources to do stuff on top.
Okay, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe I'm mixing it up, but you said on some podcast that you're even charging extra for like enterprise customers that want a bit of
Yes.
hand holding.
Yeah. No, I think that is something all businesses should do, because enterprises, they are ready to pay a lot more money than you think, and
Hmm.
especially us as startup companies, we tend to underprice ourselves, and it's a great way to kind of think big about your company. Look at your biggest competitor in the market, like not biggest in the sense of like whether they're beating you, but biggest in the sense of size of company,
Hmm.
and look at what they're charging, and then you will find your enterprise pricing. Because especially European startups, they underprice themselves massively, and you shouldn't. And a good way to think about that is, okay, then if you like this lower price self service, then at least on your enterprise package, charge more, right? Charge a lot more. And do it only for true enterprises, meaning true enterprises is somebody who will need a contract. So typically that's public companies that require something like that. They will need security questionnaires, even though you're SOC 2 Type 2, which is ridiculous, right? They send you a security questionnaire, which is exactly the same questions you get asked in a SOC 2 Type 2. I mean, this kind of stuff just needs to be charged for, right? Like
Right.
if you're adding overhead because you're a big company, then you should also be ready to pay for that. And I think in reality, most enterprise customers are. They know they are being adding overhead, and they know that's not good on the companies, and they're ready to pay for it. That's at least what we've seen. It hasn't been a lot of pushback, and it's been a good kind of way to say you can go enterprise or you can go pro, and stay on our lower plan and get everything self-service, but then you also agree to our online terms, right?
Hmm.
It's also sometimes been a way to kind of separate who's really a true enterprise and who's just like a mid market customer who really could maybe not could live with the online terms, right? And again, that makes your life easier both from an acquisition standpoint and in general liability standpoint, in the future.
Right. Yeah, I was talking to Mike Purum, and as a fan of Jason Fried and DHH, maybe you know him, founder of Sidekick, and he's a solo founder and a solo employee in his company,
Yeah,
and that's
that's
what
great.
he said as well. Like, yeah, at first you kind of think, oh, like what is one contract, but then when you get many more enterprise customers, then you're just like, okay, you guys are gonna pay thrice as much, just
Yeah,
because just two hands. Um,
just because they're adding overhead and they know it, right? They know they're
yeah,
adding overhead and they're happy to pay for it.
yeah, absolutely. All right, okay. So, well, you said, and I took it as a hint. You said you want to build something next. You're thinking about building something. Is there an idea? What's next for Espen and Sebastian?
For now, we're gonna for now we're gonna continue in with Userflow and Beamer and support that journey for a while. But yeah, in the future, I mean, Sebastian and I are entrepreneurs by heart, so maybe there's something in the future. We'll see. We have many good ideas. There are some bigger spaces we want to pursue. I think it's been fun being in the user onboarding space, but there are even bigger markets out there that could be interesting to disrupt. So I'm not going to disclose anything, even though I don't believe the idea is what you should keep secret. But I still don't want to share too much.
Yeah, don't jinx it. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, and since we started talking about how small the team is, and how you operate and how you make everything happen, I kind of started thinking about the due diligence process again, right? Because like what we do and what we encourage founders to do is to get somebody, well, to step out of the role of the CEO, right? To step out of the operational role, at least during the due diligence, to not disrupt what's going on with the company, to not disrupt the actual building of the product and growing the company, because, well, we'll have to deal with it later, right? So if everything stops because of us, that's kind of our fault. We'll have to pick it up. So with just 3 people, how disruptive was due diligence in the whole like acquisition process for you guys?
I mean, there was definitely more data gathering and stuff like that, but as mentioned, because we were running such a lean ship, a lot of the data due diligence was really just adding the Camber team and Beamer team to our tools. So tools like ChartMogul, big fan of ChartMogul. A bit expensive when you reach our AR level, I must say. I think they should reconsider that. But they are a very great tool for all metrics. We of course have Stripe. You can add people into QuickBooks. So we had a lot of like Mixpanel. So we had a lot of amazing tools that we can just add the due diligence team into. Of course, we also did some spreadsheet gymnastics here and there, but everything was just a lot easier because we had those tools in a very structured format that was easy to digest, easy to pull the right data. Also want to actually mention HubSpot because we've also been good at running a deal pipeline and things like that. So yeah, all the tools really helped us, and us keeping a very structured tool setup has helped us a lot.
Okay, so you kind of just had everything in one place. You didn't have to dig for it, and
Yeah, we didn't have to like find anything, and
hmm,
we always been good at also keeping our Google Drive in order. So one thing that's I think both Sebastian and I would come Sebastian, and I think it's part of, I don't know if it's it all starts with school, but in Danish kind of education, you kind of learn about structure and these kind of things. Then when I was before I did startups, I worked in Accenture. And if one thing I want to say I got out of Accenture is definitely structure and being good at like keeping your numbers in order, keeping your data and tools, keeping everything exportable so you can easily structure the data, easily play with the data. Um, it's something I learned in Accenture, and Sebastian has learned it as a developer, I think, because it's important to stay structured as a developer. So that kind of structural mindset is super valuable in an acquisition merger process. So it's something I would, again, if you're a bootstrap company, don't be too sloppy with your data. Don't be, and one way not to be that is really build a product-led process, because then you're forced. If all subscriptions have to go through Stripe, you're kind of forcing a structure, right? And that's a good thing.
right. Okay, I think that's a really good advice. We all have to have to master a bit of structure in our businesses. That makes it all so much easier. And that's what I keep hearing about every acquisition. But what was the kind of, if any, a surprising moment during the acquisition, or something that you were like, huh? I didn't know that's going to be happening.
Oh, now I have to think back. I think in general, I mean, of course, I knew there were going to be lawyers involved, but to the extent that lawyers needed to be involved and the disclosure schedules you need to make and these kind of things, that was a lot to me. Happily, we were in good hands with a really good legal team. But there's definitely a lot of paperwork, right? And paperwork in the sense that yes, even though they did the due diligence, then you still have to do the second step of disclosures, which is kind of the same as due diligence, but it's basically just putting whatever they might have discovered in due diligence, put that in writing in a contract, so they're not going to come back later and say you didn't tell us about this. Um, and that was maybe surprising to me that there was so much work involved in that part, really. But it's good. I think it helps everyone in the end that there are clear kind of legal language about what the acquirer knew about the company and what was even like bad things. It's as our legal team said, it's better to over disclose than under disclose. So yeah, but
Right.
definitely a big legal process was involved, bigger than I imagined.
Yeah, that's often the case. That's kind of like, what? All those
Yes.
papers. Yes, that's true.
Yep.
And okay, so what I have just one more question about the acquisition. So basically, is there anything that, you believed about the deals being done, the building relationships with the founders, which is, kind of considered conventional wisdom in SaaS, and SaaS M&A, but turned out to be not true?
No, not really. I think what, and that's maybe also a bit what was surprising. A lot of people say it's very hard to go through the due diligence and these kind of things, but to me, it was not hard. And I think that was, I think it's more saying more about the companies saying that it was hard than it says about the true acquisition process, because the things that companies are asking about in acquisition process is fair. The stuff they're asking about is fair, and it's a problem if you don't have those kind of things. And I think a lot of it stems from companies being too sales led, so they have a lot of custom stuff. Then they have some kind of customer, let's just add this different kind of add-on to them, and they're going to get it at this price, and maybe we'll just tweak this deal to be just like this, right? Or they're paying for seats instead of MAUs, or if you start making these kind of custom stuff, and then the person who did the custom stuff leaves the company, and then nobody knew how that deal was structured and why it was structured like that, that's a problem in due diligence, right? So again, it's just a benefit of product-led growth that not too many people talk about. It's really like the more you put in a structured format in your product, the more you make self-service, the more accurate database you get. It's kind of similar. You can look at it, and what's the best lead database in the world? It's LinkedIn, because people self-service update it all the time. And that's, I think it's kind of the same with a SaaS company. The more you get your users to do self-service, the more accurate your data is going to be.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. All right, and then the last one is going to be about a hack. A hack or advice. Put it any way you want, for the founders who are, looking for an exit, looking for that perfect alignment with an acquirer. What would you recommend?
Yeah. I think it's important to never be kind of desperate looking for an acquisition. So you have to trust in your company. Always have this idea that you can continue to build a strong company. So you are strong in a strong position. Of course, there will be situations where you're not in a strong position, and that's also fair. But it's always better to be in a strong position like we were. So I think don't think of it like an exit as the ultimate goal. Think about, I can still continue to grow my business. It's going to be great for me. But then a hack, I would definitely say it's still important, even as a strong business that could continue to grow, but also as the weaker business, you have to network. You have to go to the conference, even though the conferences might seem like a waste of time from a sales perspective. That's where the deals are made. I've seen it now. I think even the paddle profit well deal was made at the SaaS stock, right? It's just, that's an example. I think that's where it's hard to make deals in over email. It's one of the few. I'm a big believer in asynchronous work, working from all over the world, but I don't think a lot of acquisition deals are made in that way. Honestly, I think it's very much meeting in person, and that's how it all starts.
Right. That makes sense. I mean, everyone says, sure, like you can absolutely work remotely, you can absolutely work asynchronously, but once, you're talking about bigger deals, bigger checks and like real acquisitions happening, it's always better to meet in person because, well, people trust you with that much more money. And it means that you're
Yeah,
probably in for a way longer relationships. And, if they commit to your product without seeing you, without knowing what you're actually doing, they may be in for a very shitty experience for a very long time, because it's like it's not so easy to drop it at the end. And so I think you're absolutely right. Well, it's been great talking with you. I mean, congratulations again on the deal. It
Thank
was
you.
quite a surprise, but we're happy that you're happy. And
Yeah, no,
yeah.
it's always sad. I mean, because we were telling a great story to all the bootstrappers out there, and it could have been fantastic telling that story of three people reaching 10 million, right? But I still think telling the story of three people reaching 4.6 million is also a great story. So I'm happy we got to tell that story, and then hopefully Beamer Userflow will tell a whole other fantastic story in the future.
Yes, absolutely. All right. So, excited to see where you're at this time next year, and maybe, do another podcast. But thanks so
Yep.
much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you, and take care.